Hi, everyone, and welcome to Smart Catholics Mastermind. I'm your host, Dominic, and today I'm joined by Tammy Parker. Tammy, welcome. Good to have you with us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me join you today.
So, Tammy, you've been a speaker and accountability mentor, and you've been involved in homeschooling for a long time. And I'd love to dive into your story and the moment or something that happened to you that, especially in your faith walk. So we'll get to that in just a second. But first, Smart Catholics Mastermind. It's a live series to meet the minds and hearts of creators, leaders, speakers, hosts. They devote their time and talent to mastering their vocation so that you can live a fuller life faster. Tammy, take us away. Share with us that story about that moment when you began to realize you had to change or do something with your life that just pointed you in a fresh direction.
So I'll talk. There's so many, but I'm going to talk specifically about my journey of. I'm a convert to Catholicism, married a cradle Catholic. My husband has always been Catholic, and I was raised Methodist. Never confirmed in anything. I would joke with my husband that I was a child of God with flowers in my hair, and I still am. God and I have my walk with Him is it's definitely a walk, but I was actually brought into the Catholic faith by vehemently anti-Catholic homeschoolers who would say things, and I would pause, tip my head, and the Catholics I know, I'm like, okay, that doesn't seem right. So I started reading apologetics
Okay.
because I love to learn. My degree's in finance, but I've found myself in education. And because I love to learn and I just want to ignite people with this passion of like, we should always be learning. I don't care. You don't have to be in school to learn. And so I started reading apologetics, much to the thrill of my mother-in-law, who, basically prayed me into the church. And and so God used that because it would answer questions. I'm like, oh, well, I agree with that. Oh, well, I agree with that. And so that brought, into eventual point of, going through RCIA and whatever. But in through that, God really used the journey and the faith of my husband and his family, because God and I have always had an ongoing conversation, but the sacraments and the liturgy and the traditions just, I don't know, I just felt filled by
Mm.
all of that. And to share it with others and have conversations with people, because as a convert, one thing I wanted to is for people who aren't Catholic and have like confusion over things that are Catholic. It was like, I remember that. And I want to be one part of it is to be able to explain it well to people who are
Mhm.
confused of, why do we ask saints to pray with us?
Mhm.
And I usually say pray with us instead of pray to the saints, because it's easier for non-Catholics to understand that we're really
Okay.
praying with them,
Good.
and they're
Very good
coming
point.
alongside of us in this
Yeah.
journey of asking God to do these things.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my weird way of approaching it, especially those who aren't Catholic. And with that journey, I mean, we were homeschooling obviously at that point in time, and um, interacting with Catholics and non-Catholics in educational things, and but also like I would be in a group and pray. I'd lead prayer because I was the leader of the group, but cross myself anyways, even if that no, not everyone there is Catholic. And it led to wonderful conversations. And even now when I mentor, not everyone that I mentor or tutor or teach is Catholic, but I can be that messenger that God hopefully wants me to be through prayer to maybe raise a curiosity. I think God uses those curiosity moments to start a conversation that, who knows, it's God that has to grow it. We just kind of try to plant seeds, so to speak. So
Uh-huh.
that's kind of one of my things is reading apologetics, which sounds like you read apologetics coming to the church, but I did because I wanted to. I was confused of why people said this and they thought these things, but well, so what is the truth, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of my tipping
Nice,
point
nice.
in journey there.
And I recognize that it's probably a journey that took months and all kinds of different reading and then your own internal wrestling and stuff. I'm just curious, was there like a
Years.
particular years?
Well, yeah, at one time, foolish youth, I said, I'm never going to be Catholic and I'm going to have two kids. I am excitingly, passionately Catholic, and I have well, I have 6 forevers. I have 2 birth, 4 adopted, and I fostered like over 30 kids. And I have kids of my heart that they're in my life, right?
Beautiful.
So God, make plans if you want God to chuckle,
Uh-huh. Yep. No, he's well, there you go. So share with us your ministry. You have Pine Meadows Academy, which I think you're kind of rebranding. What is it then that you're focusing on doing? How are you living that out? How are you helping people? What's your ministry project?
Yeah, but it's Pine Meadows Academy has been a name that we've had for a long time, and it confuses people because they think we're a school, and what we are is a mentoring service that also offers academics like classes and tutoring. But our main thing that we do is mentoring, so we're kind of toying with Parker mentoring and academics, still PMA.
Okay.
But what we do is, my husband has come along as a mentor now that he's retired, but our goal, overarching mission and goal is to help people see how they can succeed, see
Mm-hmm.
how they can have a balanced life. And we kind of look at it in 5 areas, work, play, worship, study, and health. And
Mm-hmm.
health includes, are you exercising? How's your sleep? Are you eating well? That kind of thing. Because the
Mm-hmm.
other 4 make sense to people, but when you say health, they're like, what do you want?
Yeah.
But accountability mentoring leads to, a lot of times with the students anyways, is to their organizing themselves and taking the pressure off of the parent, because
Mm-hmm.
maybe they need a new messenger for that period of time, not disrespecting parents as a messenger. But
Mm-hmm.
I use mentors for my kids when they got a little older in the high school age. It helped them hear maybe the same thing I was saying, but from the same message from a different voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so we offer that. We also have a system. I'm a very organized person. I like spreadsheets. So we have spreadsheets and calendars, we lead them through. I joke that I teach them how to put myself out of business, because our goal, my husband's and I's goal is we teach them these skills and then they don't need us anymore, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they learn how to organize themselves. They learn how to, what life balance is, how to make a list of all the different classes they have here or there or wherever. And we have some high schoolers. I have some college students. We also offer life coaching or mom mentoring. So there's high school mom, like a homeschooling mom who wants just help, getting it all organized, or maybe
Yeah.
even just having someone on that journey.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of very successful entrepreneurs actually, they attribute it to having a mentor, someone along on the journey that's been there already.
Right.
So with the students, we help them organize themselves with calendars. With adults and parents or a mom that's homeschooling, we come alongside them on this journey and let them know you can do this. And there's days, a student or adult, we just need to say, God, I can't do this. I'm giving it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Carry me. And then the beauty of the Catholic faith, if any of my clients are Catholic, and even some who aren't, I'll kind of introduce them to the idea of, that's why the saints are incredible. They're ever ready to support us in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to carry us along as well. So if that makes, I don't know if that answered completely your question, but
Sure.
we mentor people to help organize themselves and to rely on God in having a balanced life.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I actually liked your point there. It's kind of a segue to our next talking point, where you said, what was it? You train people to not need you anymore,
Yes.
and you and I were just sort of chatting before this call about the that's the kind of what Smart Catholics sort of does is people don't always feel like they need us. Like the way Facebook and Instagram is put together, they've got armies of psychologists in there to kind of play with your sort of addiction centers and your hormones to get you to pay attention to the next thing. And so it does become an addiction. And going into setting up Smart Catholics as a community and realizing, one, we have none of that stuff. And that's actually a good thing. So people don't sort of feel a compulsion or a need to show up all the time. Those who do are just, they're wonderful and they choose, to spend that time.
Right.
But we're in kind of the same thing. We want people to feel better about themselves and then go back to living, a little more centered, a little more balanced, maybe a little smarter of a life, something like that. So I'm curious now to sort of ask you this next little question here. One of the big themes that we're kind of noodling over, especially in this sort of phase of our community, is the idea of being a faith first responder. And I'm curious to get sort of your articulation of this idea, how you would think about it. And the way we've been talking about it, it's something like this, where the church ministers to us, and then we are called to minister to the world, which means we're like a frontier, a first contact with friends and family and community. So the idea of then being a first responder in a field hospital, what does that bring to your mind? How would you describe that? And and then how are you doing that?
Yeah, I think it's how we live our lives in the biggest way, that we can check off all sorts of boxes. In the Catholic faith, sometimes we can get so focused on rules and checking off boxes and doing these things that it we become rigid, and where if we live it and
Mhm.
it comes through us in living it, the message is so much stronger, not only in our own lives, but into the lives of others. I remember long ago when I was, probably a young teen, I was at a place and I saw a lady who was Catholic, I assume anyway. Before she ate, she bowed her head, didn't make a production out of it, bowed her head, crossed herself, obviously said a prayer, crossed herself again, and ate. That small thing is stuck with me for years. She didn't do it to show off. She didn't do it to what for anyone around herself. She was living her life, right? She was thanking God for the meal at this cafeteria that she was eating, and it stuck with me in the sense of how I live my life matters, and what I do and say to people matter, in the big things that I can do and in the small things that I might do or not do. And and not in a pressure way, like I got to be on every second. And then unfortunately, our the Facebook world, the Twitter world, how am I going to look great on this or whatever? I don't mean it that way. I mean it is walking with God and remembering those moments of coming, like creating routines for yourself, so it becomes second nature and natural, and that you're relying on him and relying on the saints to pray with you, and the rituals of, liturgical portion of the church is just beautiful.
Mhm.
But living it,
Yeah.
and in kindness, that's the biggest message, is to doing it in kindness and not in looking for the worst in people, but
Mhm.
looking for the best in them, even if they have a different faith walk, even if they, maybe they've never met the Lord. Isn't it more likely that they're going to be curious about the Lord and your walk if
Mhm.
you are being loving and kind instead of judgmental and giving, telling them they need it,
Yeah.
we call it shoulding on someone when someone shoulds on you. I don't like to be should on. So, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. But just, living it out in a loving way that's inviting, right? To
Yeah.
make our lives and the way we live inviting,
Mhm.
because, with Jesus, I mean, that when you read the scriptures, that was he was about, is, when the disciples were coming and they're not doing something the right way. And he's like, they're doing it with me, right?
Mhm.
They're maybe not part of the 12, but they're doing it with me, and I can't quote scripture directly to tell you which Bible verse, but it's in there.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think about that, that let's be loving, let's be kind, let's live our faith well.
Mhm.
And I think that's in an inviting way. And so, as a first responder, getting back to your question,
Mhm.
I want to be a first responder in love and in kindness, and in meeting them where they're at,
Mhm.
instead of where I expect them that they should be.
Yeah.
So that's my first responder, is just trying to, give them God's love wherever they're at.
Mhm. That's beautifully said. And I mean, we ourselves have very deep and passionate convictions,
Mhm.
and we all know that we're on a journey into holiness, and we're working on that ourselves. But just, I think it's a matter of recognition that others may just they don't see it the way we do, and like you said, to go all should on them. Uh, I mean, it just that's and this is why the idea of like a first responder I think is so important, because it's not like a book or a blog that lays out. It's not like a manual. We're not called to go out and be manuals to the rest of the world. What we need is somebody who can make a friend, make a conversation, find out where they're at. And this is, I think, that point that we kind of didn't get into it, and I'd actually like to sometime, where a lot of the questions that would come up in your own journey as you were going into the apologetics and so on, at that point you were warm to where this might be going. You wanted the answers, and so that's a completely different relationship, as opposed to that's when the words are needed, are wanted, for somebody who is actively asking for the hope that is in us, as opposed to people who aren't yet asking, who don't yet
or
think or
pushing you
recognize.
away. I mean, I have an uncle
Yeah.
who's an atheist, and he likes to try to poke me and push me and whatever,
Mhm.
and and with others as well. And I frustrate him because I purposely slow down when I'm around him, and I'm not
Mm.
around him a lot. He lives in Chicago, but I try to calm myself and remember I am who I am. I believe what I believe, and I need to communicate this in a way that's not pushing. He wants to push at me, but I
Mhm.
think God's using it because I'm just speaking the truth as I see it and how God has presented it to me. And but he tries to fight and try to get me to see his truth, and I'm like,
Yeah.
but it's not truth. I don't know what. But I try to do it in a non angry,
Yeah.
that way. And so
Without the sort
it's
of the mic
interesting.
drops and the.
Yeah, and so has God used it in his life? God will use it, as much as he will allow it, as my uncle will
Mhm.
allow it, because that free will thing, right? When,
Mhm.
even with children, as a parent, you want these things for your children, and sometimes you're like, just wish they were little robots and you could program them, and that just would be the way they are. But no, God gave them free will. He gave
Mhm.
me free will, and being that and speaking the truth, it's
Mhm.
just speaking it in a way that meets them where they're at, that
Yeah.
calls them
Yeah.
on, perhaps, maybe bugs them. I know I frustrated one young gentleman one time because he's like, so let me get you right. You're okay if no matter what faith someone has, you just want to be Catholic. I'm like, not quite. And he's like, what? And I'm like, okay. It's like dessert. I found this dessert and it's wonderfully delicious. And I want you to try it because there's all these things that your dessert doesn't have. Your dessert's fine and great. And I'm glad that God led you there, but you should really try this. And he's like,
Mhm.
so you're so excited about your faith in what you found there that you want me to share in it. And I'm like, you got it. That's what I want for you, is I want you to see this beauty that God has presented here in the liturgical, tradition, and
Mhm.
just all of this. And he's like, okay, you know, will he ever convert to Catholicism? I don't know. Did it help him in his own walk with God? I certainly hope so. I don't know.
Mhm.
It was a conversation,
Yeah.
you know,
Beautiful.
and with a little pushback from him, but it wasn't, again, trying to avoid that should have. Not that I don't should on people too, because I think we all do at
Mhm.
times.
Well, yeah. It just depends on the context.
Yeah, but
When.
trying to remind myself of, how do I want to be treated too? You
Yeah.
know, how- you know, how do I want to be loved? How do I
Mhm.
want, so that's part of it in there too.
Yep. Yep. No, there's this quote I love that says you don't argue with holiness. You can't argue with it. You can experience it, you can reject it, appreciate it. You can't argue with it, as opposed to an argument or words, a discussion, but just witness of a life well lived or beautifully lived.
Hmm.
And I think that's what our Holy Father is calling us to: is we need to start thinking like this. We need to start living like this. So let's wrap up, Tammy. And you've kind of already sort of done this last question a bunch of times in this our few minutes here together. But if you had 1 minute to share a message with the world, what would you say?
Be kind. Be kind. Uh, God is love and full of love, and He calls us to be His love and reflect His love to others in a way of being that light. I loved a story told one time about a mirror. Someone made an analogy of God's love of being the mirror where you reflect the brightness of His love to the world.
Hmm.
And but kindness has to be in there in my opinion, of being kind. Be kind to yourself. Sometimes we're so hard on ourselves, and we're not good enough, and we didn't say that right thing, or we didn't do it the right way, or whatever. God loves us.
Yeah.
He loves us. He loves us in our failings. He already knew that we needed him. We needed Christ. We need the sacraments that he gives us. So, even when we fail and we fall down and we didn't say that something quite the right way, be kind to
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
We have reconciliation. We have right before at the beginning of Mass where we can lift things up and
Mhm.
ask God, okay, I just need help with this. Please forgive me for, whatever. And be kind to yourself. And let that kindness flow to others. So my big message to the world is can we be kind to one another in our disagreements and in our agreements, but
Mhm.
especially in our disagreements, because this world right now, to me, there's a lot of just arguments and just all sorts of tension and disagreements going on, and they're doing it this way and I think they should do it this way and whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, we can disagree, but can we do it in love? Can we do it in kindness? Can
Mhm.
we recognize the holiness of the other person, that God loves them? That's one thing when I teach my students about life balance, is I say, okay, there's two things I think God gives us equally: time, like 24 hours in a day, and his love. He might give me different charisms than he gives you. Okay. I might have different opportunities than you. I might have been born into a different family than you. I might stub my toe on that thing and you stub your toe on that thing. But he gives his love and time. We all die at different times. Yeah, I get that. But like 24 hours in a day, our opportunity to live out this life that he gives us, he gives that
Mhm.
equally. And his love. He doesn't love them more than me. He loves us all. And
Mhm.
if we can remember that, especially in our frustrations with others, I think it helps us to be kind, because remember, he loves them too.
Mhm.
And that's my message.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tammy. Such a great little. Um, uh, One of the gospel readings this past week was, God sends, what is it, the sun and the rain on
Yes.
everybody equally. So how can I think this is what the Hebrew inspired authors were now wrestling with was, well, I'm supposed to sort of hate my enemies and love my friends, but God sends rain and sunshine to everybody. So
Yep.
I don't know how to deal with this. And Christ comes along and says, we need a new outlook here, everybody. So
Right.
uh, thanks so much, Tammy, for joining us. I personally appreciated
Well,
a chance to
I'm
meet
thrilled
you a
to
little
have
bit
been
more.
here, and thank you for the opportunity. So God
Thank
bless
you.
you.
So, for those who enjoyed watching this, please share it with your one friend that you think would also enjoy watching this, and then come and regroup with us in the free Catholic community on smartcatholics.com. We are free of trolls and ads and toxicity. We are faithful to the Holy Father, Pope Francis, and the Church, and we're committed to a culture of kindness and learning. Does that sound like you? Then come and join us. Thanks again. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks again to you, Tammy.